Ms McCarthy, Mr Richardson and Mr Gargan. Very welcome, and I'm delighted that you're here because I've raised the issue of the Reserve Defence Forces a couple of times, and there's a few things have been a revelation to me. I think the figures that were given was that the strength of it's down at about 940. Is that correct at the moment?
No, Deputy, it's about 1,700. So we have seen
growth
in recent times.
Okay, yeah. Okay, but compared to what it used to be, we'd say under Forest Cusund Chula, it's a fraction of that. And just a couple of questions in terms of, and the paper you supplied is very good because it outlines, it's a revelation as well in terms of that the total budget for it is 0.34 of the total defence spending. It does show it being given low priority, 3.5 million. And a third of a million 0.34 of the overall spending of the defence budget. But the questions I have is just in relation to, I'm trying to understand the amount of time that's involved with, say, typically what's expected of you in terms of time, training, travel, deployments and security duties mentioned in your document. Just in a couple of sentences, if you can just outline that for me, just briefly. I know our time is short and I don't want to be abrupt with you because of that, Thanks. Because I have a number of other questions.
Look, if I could take those, just by way of response.
Just briefly, just to give us a kind of a picture.
Yeah, no trouble.
What's
Deputy.
expected?
Minimum training for a reservist is approximately 26 days to be trained as a reservist. So it's 26 days to get a person from a recruit to what's referred to as a 2-star private level. Another 26 days to get them up to what's called 3-star private level, and at that point they're considered a fully trained reservist and they can go for a whole raft of other courses. But the key point to make in this is that our minimum training requirement annually equates to about 12 days, thereabouts in terms of hours. That's the bare minimum a reservist needs to do, but the vast majority of reservists will partake in an awful lot more range of training or courses or duties, as we discussed earlier. So the average is actually about 50 to sometimes 80 days for particularly active reservists. So it's really at this point how much a reservist is able to commit, but the minimum requirement is 12 days per annum, but about 26 days to get trained in the first instance. We note, for example, though, that the White Paper on Defence back from 2015 only allocated 7 paid days per annum to every member of the reserve. That's where the budget came from, or where it started off in 2015. But your initial entrance course is 26 days, and under the White Paper we were allocated 7 paid days each, so it doesn't even equate to cover basic training. Now, the fact that our numbers are beneath our overall establishment meant that there was funding allocation for other activities, but if we had a 4,000 strength full reserve right now, the budget would technically only supposed to cover 7 paid days per annum, and it takes 26 days to become a reserve.
Could I ask, is the activities typically, because obviously if day jobs, recruits in it, members of it, the tasks are mainly performed at weekends, or the demands on you?
It would be a mixture of evenings, weekends, and then 1 or 2 week blocks.
And the security duties would be at barracks around the country?
Exactly, Deputy. Right. And on the security duty point, as Senator Crockwell mentioned, a lot of reserve outposts or training centres closed in recent years. So for reservists to actually come to a location where they can engage in military duties, for some it's a significant drive, all at their own expense. And then when they're actually undertaking this security duty, they are not in receipt of the additional allowance that members of the permanent defence forces get.
There's no allowance for travel or anything like that?
No, no deputies.
So just to move on kind of quickly then, and in terms of the target of that the department have and the government have, and the higher echelons of the defence forces, what's the target for what strength do they wish to bring it to?
Well, for the permanent defence forces, it's 11,500.
Yes,
and for us,
the reserve
4,500.
4,500. Now, at the moment, you're at 1,700.
1,700, correct.
Okay, so you're about a third of the way there. And just in relation to, there's another question I had with me as well. Just in relation to the, there's no regular salary, there's no retainer, no gratuity. There isn't anything like that. It's just, it's for duties paid. And in relation to, years ago, if you were working with fellas who were in the FCA at that time, they would go away on camp every year, and it was typically during their work holidays. They would go for a fortnight to camp. Is there still that fortnight block every year? Does that still? happen?
That still takes place, Deputy. It's less common than it used to be. Unit camp is a sort of a recurrency event, so
right.
individuals are engaging in recurrency training, whereas now most 7 and 14-day blocks are formalised courses where reservists are learning a new skill as opposed to engaging in recurrency for stuff they've already learned. So camp as a notion has sort of drifted away in recent years and been replaced with conducting courses over these 7 or 14-day blocks, but it's a very similar setup. It's a similar model.
And just in terms of tasks as well, we say, typically the Defence Forces are brought in at times when, when there's a crisis, severe flooding or after storms or something like that, or major security event or something like that. Would the reserve be called up in those situations?
Absolutely, Deputy, and regularly are. And if I can just mention briefly, like some of the things that reservists have done in recent times in that regard. Patient transportation, critical patients during extreme weather events. We were widely used during the COVID pandemic in testing centres, either as support staff or indeed conducting swabbing. We have cyber defence reservists that take part in cyber coalition exercises, reservists involved in Defence Forces research and innovation. We have professional mariners that serve in our Naval Service Reserve, so they take their external qualifications and apply them in that sphere. Recently we had a reservist deployed to Cyprus as part of an overseas mission to help train Ukrainians in demining as part of the EU military assistance mission. So we're at a point now where reservists are engaging in quite high profile activities in support of the state, and then widespread day-to-day tasks as well in support of the Permanent Defence Forces.
And can we just move on to the Department's position and the Minister's position? The Taoiseach obviously is welcome intervention, and Mr. Gargan said that it took your appearance here this morning, but so it's worthwhile coming. if you can even get that moving, because sometimes these things move at glacier pace, right? So it's a worthwhile and a welcome step forward, and hopefully that can bear fruit. But just in relation to the document we received from the department, and it's a letter of instruction, and it said that it sets out in relation to the situation with the pay. It said 2023 the Defence Forces issued a letter of instruction relating to such payments. Right? Letter of instruction was regrettably not consistent with the regulations and resulted in payments being made for activities which there was no provision in the Defence Forces remuneration or sanction for payment. Okay? And they're basically saying this was an error, right? I won't read the whole document, I haven't time to do it. I'll just wrap up now, Oireachtas, in a moment, but this is the important bit. They say that the Defence Forces are considering the position, and if they wish to extend the number of paid activities for RDF, any case made will be considered by the Taoiseach and Minister of Defence. This is the normal procedure. While work is ongoing, the Defence Forces are working on possible solutions for members of the RDF. So that seemed to be saying in that letter to us, which I only got this morning, that that they're trying to do something in the interim in terms of doing it. And I suppose just in terms of how we can help, maybe that the committee maybe would make representations both to DEPR, because DEPR, I think one of the other speakers said that DEPR does hold the purse strings. The cake is only so big, I know that, right? And obviously, funding has to come from somewhere. It can't be pulled out of the sky. But I do think, we're talking about a very, very small amount of money here for the services being provided. And I just think I raised the reserve before here because I just feel that it's an area that, as a state and as a country, we haven't given due attention to or credit to, right? I said this in your absence, so I'm telling you what I think about it. And I just think that would be useful for us as a committee to make representations to both departments and to the Taoiseach on your behalf, if the committee is agreeable to that. Okay. Thanks for it.
And we may finish it with that, but I'll take that as a proposal.
Yes. Yeah, that's acceptable to the committee.
To DEPR and to the Taoiseach
Thank you.
on the back of today's hearings. Okay, we go next.